And so Ukraine, over the course of 50 years, experienced not one, but 4 or 5 nonviolent revolutions, depending on how you count it. When we think about nonviolent resistance, we think of Mahatma Gandhi and his spectacular movement in India. We think of Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, and his wonderful campaign for against segregation and for the rights of our African American citizens in this country, and we think of solidarity. But actually, Ukraine experienced the Green Revolution, the Zeleny Svit. It experienced the Ruch independence movement. It included the so-called revolution on concrete, where students like yourselves mobilized to have a hunger strike that won major demands and forced the loss of the Soviet Union. And then there was the Orange Revolution in 2004, and most recently, the Revolution of Dignity, the Maidan, when Ukrainians massively protested against their government's refusal to enter into the European Union. And today we have with us a witness and a leader of that revolution. Olena Sotnyk is a graduate of the Drahmanov Pedagogical University in Kyiv. In 2005, she received her law degree from the National University of Internal Affairs. And between 2011 and 2013, she served on the national board of the Ukrainian Bar Association. Olena, during the Maidan Revolution of Dignity, you don't mind if I butter you up a little bit. During the Revolution of Dignity, she helped to coordinate the legal defense fund for many of the protesters that were brutalized by the police, by the riot police during that time. And she joined a team of lawyers afterwards to protect the rights and the interests of the relatives of the so-called Heavenly Hundred, the heroic martyrs of that revolution. Since 2014, she was elected to the Parliament of Ukraine under the banner of the Samopomich, or the Self-Reliance Party. And she served as the secretary of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on European Integration and many other very important committees and subcommittees that were involved in the whole reform effort in Ukraine. When you hear certain people in our government talking about corruption in Ukraine, you should know that there's been tremendous progress that actually has been made in combating corruption and promoting democracy in recent years. And more recently, Olena became a permanent delegate to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, PACE, and she graduated from the training program for global democratic leaders at Stanford University Center for Democracy, Development of Rule of Law. And more recently, we were fortunate enough to have her join us here at New Haven because she's now a Greenberg International World Fellow at Yale University. So with no further ado, do welcome Olena Sotnyk.
Thank you for this opportunity. You know, starving, it is one of the hardest tortures, one of the most cruel ones. Have you ever tried to stay without food for several days, maybe weeks? Or have you ever tried to stay without food and water, for example, for several days and maybe even weeks? Definitely you would die. I had this experience in my life. I did it on purpose, of course. It wasn't like somebody was trying to kill me. But it is a very specific and special feeling. First days when you don't eat and you don't drink water, your body is trying to save the energy. You movement slowly, you think less, and your mind just repeat one thought: food and water, food and water. And after 3 days, you feel like your body is starting to fall asleep, but it means your body is dying. I had this experience for 5 days. After the 7th and 8th, people, as a rule, they don't survive. So you can imagine how cruel was deaths of millions of Ukrainians, and how cruel was this guy, whose name is Stalin, who, by the way, was recognized by Russians just this year as the most important leader of Russian history. how cruel he was, and how he was desperately, intentionally killing Ukrainians. And I'm sure that his idea wasn't just to kill them with starvation. The idea was to destroy spirit and to destroy, I would say, the main value of Ukrainians, humanity. Because when you are starving, you are losing humanity. You think just about food and water. And I'm happy that he didn't succeed. I'm happy that Ukrainians survived. And they became even more stronger. And in 2014, today is 6th anniversary of Revolution of Dignity. In 2014, this new generation, but the same very strong Ukrainians went to Maidan. Yes, I wasn't just the witness or observer of these protests. I was active participant. And if would somebody tell me, would you go one more time, I would go many millions of times to Maidan, and I would participate there. And I want to share with you just two small short stories, which still they're living in my heart, and they're just helping me to continue to go on even when everything is like falling apart for the Ukraine. The first story about love. Yes, I was the lawyer of Heavenly 100. And one of my clients was family of Vasil Maisei. This is a young boy. He was shot on Maidan. And when I was like collecting the evidences for the representation for the investigation, I talked with the guy, with his friend who been with him the last minutes of his life when he was shot. And he told me, you know, he was dying with a smile on his mouth, on his face. And I remember his last words. They never will left me, and they inspire me forever. And these words of young boy who was dying on Maidan, he knew that Yanukovych killed him, but at the same moment, his last words was, "I'm sorry, I love you all." These words mean a lot. It means the main value of Ukrainians. To love people, to be human beings, even in this cruel, inhuman world. And he, for me, is like some kind of icon. When I feel desperate, or I feel weak, or I feel tired maybe, or uninspired, I always remember these words and this young boy. And the second story, it is a story about spirit. Because I believe the second strength of Ukrainians, it's our spirit. So each day, each evening on Maidan, we've been getting together at 9 o'clock in the evening. And people, they've been singing our national hymn. But you know, it wasn't just the words of this national song. It was special sound of nation, of unity, and of spirit to fight and to win. And it was unique moments each evening, whatever I would do, whatever I will like busy or not, I would go to Maidan and sing together with Ukrainians who believed in better future for their country this song. And you know, now if we look to both these histories, Stalin was trying to kill millions of Ukrainians. Yanukovych killed hundreds of the best Ukrainians. Putin now continue, it didn't finish, continue to kill thousands of Ukrainians. But I want to tell to all the world, we are not going to give up. And definitely Ukraine will win. And to all Ukrainians, if they feel tired, just remember about these people. They died because they believed in the better future of Ukraine, and we can't betray them. Thank you.